My daughter was only 11 days old. She was wrapped in her soft white blanket, sleeping in my arms. We sat by our small backyard fire on the first cool night of fall. The fire was safe, and we had a permit. Then Karen, our HOA boss in her bright red jacket, came running over yelling, "No fires allowed! You are breaking the rules!" I tried to stay calm. I showed her the permit. I said, "It's okay. The fire is small. We are just making one marshmallow for our little boy." But Karen did not listen. She walked right up, grabbed my tiny baby out of my arms, and threw her toward the fire. "If you like fire so much, take this," she screamed. My 11-day-old baby flew through the air like a little white ball. Karen laughed and put her hands on her hips. "That will teach you," she said. She had no idea. The tiny baby she just threw at the fire was the police chief's daughter. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are watching from, and please hit subscribe for more stories where the good guys always win. My daughter was only 11 days old, barely the size of my forearm, wrapped in her soft white blanket with tiny stitched stars along the edges. She slept quietly in my arms, her breath small and warm against my chest. It was our first cool night of fall, the kind of evening where the air smelled like leaves and the sky looked like velvet. We sat near our small backyard fire pit, its flames no bigger than a handful of candles. The fire was completely safe. We had a legal permit taped to the fence, the hose nearby, and a metal safety ring around the pit. Even our toddler son stood far back, holding one marshmallow on a stick, bouncing with excitement. Everything felt peaceful, everything felt calm, and then the peace died in a single scream. "No fires allowed. You are breaking the rules." Karen, our HOA boss, self-declared neighborhood queen and professional troublemaker, came storming across the grass like she was leading an army. She wore her bright red jacket, the one she loved because she said it made her look official, even though everyone knew she had zero authority beyond reminding people about trash day. But tonight, she wasn't reminding anyone of anything. Tonight, she was furious. Before she even reached us, she started waving her arms. "You people are out of control. No flames, no smoke, no burning anything. You are violating HOA Standards Section 5 Billions, page 12. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Karen, we have a permit," I said, holding it up. "We filed it with the city. The fire is tiny and everything is safe." She didn't even glance at the paper. "Permits don't matter," she snapped. "This is my neighborhood, my rules, my approval." My wife stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. "Karen, please. The baby is sleeping. Keep your voice down." Karen's eyes shifted, straight to my daughter, straight to the tiny white blanket in my arms, and something changed in her face, something sharp, something angry, something that made my stomach turn. She marched forward so fast I barely had time to react. "What are you doing with a baby near fire?" she screamed. "This is child endangerment." "We're not endangering anyone," I said firmly. "We're 10 feet away. The fire is small. Everything is under control." But Karen wasn't listening. Karen never listened. In her mind, she was the hero, the savior, the all-powerful guardian of her precious HOA rulebook, and in that moment she decided she needed to teach us a lesson. Without warning, without hesitation, she reached out, grabbed the corner of the baby's blanket, and yanked my newborn out of my arms. My heart stopped. My wife screamed, "Karen, no!" And before I could even process what was happening, Karen threw my baby toward the fire pit. Everything slowed. Everything blurred. It felt like the world froze in horror as my 11-day-old daughter tumbled through the air like a little white bundle. My breath tore from my chest. I threw myself forward, diving, stretching out my arms with every ounce of strength in my body. I caught her, just inches before she could fall anywhere near the fire. She landed safely in my hands, her tiny body warm, her little face scrunched from the sudden movement, letting out a startled cry. She was unharmed. She was safe. But my heart was burning hotter than the fire itself. I pulled her close, holding her tight, feeling her soft cries against my chest. My wife fell to her knees beside us, trembling, checking every inch of our newborn. "She's okay," I whispered. "She's okay. I've got her." Karen stood only a few feet away, her hands on her hips, her chin raised proudly like she had done something noble. That will teach you to follow the rules, she shouted. My wife stared at her in disbelief. You threw a newborn, she said, her voice shaking. Karen shrugged. She was wrapped in a blanket. It's not like she was going to touch the fire. You people exaggerate. My son hid behind my leg, clutching his marshmallow stick, whispering, Daddy, why is she mean? I slowly stood, holding my daughter close, the anger boiling through every vein in my body. Karen smirked at me, completely unaware of the storm she had just created. She had no idea who she had just grabbed. She had no idea whose baby she had just thrown. Because the tiny 11-day-old girl she had treated like a toy was the police chief's daughter, mine, and I was done staying calm. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're watching from, and make sure you hit subscribe for more HOA stories, where the good guys always win. My arms snapped forward just in time. The world seemed to slow as I caught my newborn daughter against my chest, pulling her tight to keep her safe. Her tiny body trembled, her soft cry pressing against my shirt. She wasn't hurt, not even close, but the shock of what Karen had done left my heart pounding like never before. I held her close, whispering softly, trying to calm her tiny whimpers. It's okay. Daddy's got you. You're safe. My wife rushed over, panic all over her face. She cupped the baby's head gently, tears streaming down her cheeks. Are you crazy? She screamed at Karen. She's 11 days old. Karen rolled her eyes as if she had been mildly inconvenienced. Oh, please, she said. She barely went anywhere. You're being dramatic. I could feel my blood pressure rising, not from fear, from anger. The kind of anger only a parent knows when someone endangers their child. You grabbed an 11-day-old baby, I said slowly. You threw her. Karen shrugged. She was wrapped in a blanket. Nothing happened. And besides, the HOA rules are more important than your feelings. The arrogance in her voice sent a wave of disbelief through the neighbors watching from behind their fences. That's when I heard it. A quiet whisper from the backyard behind us. Did Karen just throw their baby? Another voice answered. She did. I saw her. I didn't even look toward them. My eyes stayed locked on Karen. She stomped her foot like a child throwing a tantrum. I am the HOA president, she shouted, pointing at herself proudly. You have to listen to me. Fires are not allowed. Babies near fires are a violation. You're lucky I don't fine you. My wife stepped beside me, her voice shaking with fury. No rule gives you the right to touch someone's baby, she said. No rule lets you grab a newborn out of a parent's arms. But Karen wasn't listening. Her face was red with rage, and her voice grew shriller. If you didn't want this to happen, she barked, you shouldn't have broken the rules. This is your fault, not mine. My newborn cried again, her tiny fists curling. My wife rocked her gently, whispering to her, trying to soothe her. I stepped a little closer to Karen. You don't touch a child, I said quietly. Ever, especially not mine. Something flickered in Karen's face for the first time. Not regret, but uncertainty. She looked around. More neighbors were stepping outside now, drawn by the shouting. People walked along the sidewalk. Children peeked over fences. Phones came out. Recording, watching, waiting. And for the first time, Karen realized she wasn't in control. What are you all staring at? She shouted. I'm protecting the HOA. I'm enforcing community standards. A neighbor yelled back. You threw their baby. Karen sucked in a sharp breath. That's a lie, she snapped. It was a tiny toss, a gentle movement. Nothing happened. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Tiny toss? Someone repeated. You threw an infant. Karen's voice cracked. You people don't understand. I have to enforce the rules. If I don't stop things like this, the whole neighborhood will fall apart. That's why I was elected. You weren't elected, someone muttered. You were the only one who signed up. Karen ignored that completely. She pointed at our fire again. You broke the rules and I fixed the problem. My grip tightened around my baby. She was calming down now, her breathing slowing as she nestled into my wife's arms. But the idea that she had been pulled away, that Karen had thought she could grab her like a toy, kept my anger sharp. You didn't fix anything, I said. You created danger where none existed. Karen scoffed loudly. Danger? Oh, please, a fire pit, a blanket, nothing happened. Stop pretending this is some tragedy. My wife stepped forward, controlled but furious. You took our newborn, she said. You grabbed her. You threw her. You scared her. Karen's voice cracked. I was just making a point. My eyebrows lifted. A point? Karen nodded violently, her red jacket shaking with her movements. Yes, a point. That rules matter. If I let you get away with this, then everyone will think they can do whatever they want. A teenager near the fence called out, No one even cares about that stupid fire rule. Yeah, another voice said. You just like yelling at people. Karen spun toward them with wide, angry eyes. You all like to break rules. You leave trash out. You make noise. You take up parking spots you shouldn't. I try to keep order, and this is how you repay me? But the crowd didn't look scared. They looked tired. Tired of her yelling. Tired of her controlling. Tired of her acting like the neighborhood belonged to her. Karen kept shouting, waving her arms. I'm the only one who cares about this neighborhood. Without me, this place will fall apart. I'm doing everyone a favor. My daughter whimpered softly. My wife held her close. I looked at Karen with calm, controlled anger. You're not doing anyone a favor, I said. You're hurting people, and tonight you crossed the biggest line you ever could. Karen blinked, confusion mixing with fear. What line? She demanded. I stepped closer. You grabbed a baby. Silence. Dead, heavy silence. Even Karen felt the weight of those words. And the worst part? She didn't know the truth yet. She didn't know whose baby she had thrown. But she was about to find out. The moment Karen finished screaming about rules, the neighborhood began to wake up. Not slowly, but all at once. Like a wave rolling across the street. First, one porch light flicked on. Then another. Then voices started whispering from fences, windows, and open doors. What happened? Is that Karen yelling again? Is she fighting with them? Wait, did she throw their baby? The whispers grew louder, turning into a low hum of shock and disbelief. Karen spun in a circle, her red jacket flaring like a warning flag. Don't just stand there, she yelled at the neighbors. Back me up. They are breaking rules. But no one stepped forward, not one single person. Instead, people stepped closer to us. Mr. Monroe crossed the street from his driveway, shaking his head. Old Mrs. Bennett clutched her robe as she came out onto her porch. The family from across the road gathered on the grass, mouths open in disbelief. Karen, what is wrong with you? Mrs. Bennett snapped, pointing at the baby cradled in my wife's arms. She's holding a newborn. Karen lifted her chin defiantly. The rules say no fires. I'm enforcing safety. Safety? A neighbor scoffed. You just threw a baby. Karen's eyes darted around like trapped bugs trying to escape a jar. No, I didn't, she shouted, her voice cracking. But the neighbors shook their heads. We saw it. You grabbed her. You tossed her like a toy. She could have been hurt. Karen covered her ears. Stop lying, she screamed. I protected this neighborhood for years. I do everything for you people. And this is how you treat me? My newborn yawned softly in my wife's arms, completely unaware of the chaos tearing the yard apart. She blinked once, sighed softly, and nestled into the blanket, safe and warm. My wife kissed her forehead gently. Karen, I said evenly, you crossed the line today. Karen glared at me. What are you going to do, complain to the board? The board loves me. I own this neighborhood. I stared at her. You don't own anything. She stepped closer, pointing her finger at my chest. Yes, I do. I am the HOA president. I enforce every rule, and you will respect. I slowly reached into my jacket. Karen froze. Her eyes locked on my hand, fear flickering across her face for the first time. Wait, she whispered. What are you doing? What are you taking out? I didn't rush. I didn't speak. I simply continued sliding the object out of my jacket pocket. Karen's breathing grew faster. What is that? She whispered hoarsely. A ticket book? A complaint form? You can't write me up. I can write you up. I pulled my hand out fully, and the moment the silver reflection hit her eyes, her mouth dropped open like she'd been punched. Because it wasn't a ticket book. It wasn't a complaint form. It was my police badge. Karen took a step back. You're with the police? She croaked. I stepped forward. I'm not just with the police, I said quietly, but firmly enough for every neighbor to hear. I'm the police chief. Gasps echoed around the yard. Someone whispered, Oh my God. Another said, Karen messed up this time. Karen looked like she forgot how to breathe. You're the police chief? she stuttered. You? But you didn't tell me. You didn't say anything. You shouldn't need to know my job, I replied. You only needed to know not to touch my child. Karen's lips trembled. I didn't mean it, she stammered. It was the blanket. The fire scared me. The rules. The rules, I interrupted. Don't let you lay a hand on a baby. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked around desperately for support. Someone tell him I didn't do anything wrong, she pleaded. You all know I protect this neighborhood. I keep the grass nice. I monitor the trash bins. You terrorize us, Mr. Monroe said. You yell at kids for playing. You fine people for having holiday lights, added Mrs. Bennett. You threatened to tow my car because it was too shiny, someone else said. Karen's jaw dropped. I was helping you people. Don't you get it? Without me, the HOA falls apart. She pointed wildly at the neighbors. You all break the rules constantly. And you threw their newborn, a teenager said from the fence. The words sliced through the night like a blade. Karen froze. Completely. The anger drained from her face. The pride evaporated. What was left was fear. Real fear. Because she finally understood what everyone else already knew. No rulebook could save her now. No title could protect her. No shouting could undo what she did. She had touched the wrong baby. My baby. And now the entire neighborhood knew the truth. I held up my badge again. Karen stared at it like it was the end of her world, and for her HOA reign of terror. It was. Karen stood frozen, her mouth half open, her breath shaking, as if the cool night air suddenly became too heavy for her lungs. For the first time since she became HOA president, she wasn't yelling, wasn't bossing, wasn't demanding anyone follow her precious rules. She was scared. Really, truly scared. No, 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 she whispered, backing away so quickly her shoes slid in the grass. I didn't know. I didn't know the baby was yours. I stepped forward, my badge still glinting under the porch light. That shouldn't matter, I said, my voice steady. She's a child. You don't throw children. Karen's face crumpled like paper. She lifted both hands as if she could shield herself from her own actions. It was an accident, she blurted. The blanket slipped. I just moved her a little. You're twisting things. The neighbors behind us spoke immediately. We saw everything, Mrs. Bennett said sharply. You grabbed the baby, Mr. Monroe added. And you threw her, the teenager near the fence said. Karen spun in a frantic circle, pointing at them with trembling fingers. You're all against me, she shouted. Her voice cracked, thin and panicked. I was only enforcing the HOA rules. That's my job. That's what I do. A neighbor stepped forward. No rule allows you to touch someone's baby. Karen's lip trembled. I didn't mean it. I just wanted to stop the fire, she said, but even she sounded unsure of her own excuse. By endangering a newborn? Someone snapped. Karen backed up so fast she stumbled over her own feet, nearly falling on the grass. I didn't know this would happen, she cried. I didn't mean. You made it happen, I said, my voice low. Karen froze. Her eyes locked onto mine. And then, the sound she feared most began echoing in the distance. Sirens. Not loud yet, not close yet, but unmistakable. Karen's mouth dropped open. No, she whispered. No, not the police, not for this. But this wasn't a parking violation. This wasn't a lawn height complaint. This wasn't about rules or fines or her yelling. This was about a baby, my 11-day-old daughter. Karen took another step back, clutching her jacket tightly around herself like a shield. This is all a misunderstanding, she said quickly. Right? Tell them it's a misunderstanding. Tell them you won't press charges. I didn't mean any harm, I swear. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You grabbed my daughter, I said. You threw her. That's all that matters. Karen let out a sharp gasp. I'm the HOA president, she shouted desperately. That has to count for something. I keep this neighborhood safe. Mr. Monroe shook his head. You terrorize this neighborhood. You yell at kids for chalk drawings, the teenager added. You fine me for planting flowers, someone else said. Karen's voice rose again, frantic. I was helping you. I was protecting the community. I was the only one doing anything. No, I said quietly. You were hurting people. Karen's eyes filled with tears, not sadness, not guilt, but fear, realization, loss of control. I didn't know she was your daughter. She whispered again, almost pleading. It wouldn't matter, I said. You don't touch any baby. Karen swallowed hard. Her voice came out in a tiny, cracked whisper. Are you going to arrest me? That's not up to me, I said, but the officers will want to talk to you. Karen turned her head slowly toward the street. The sirens were louder now, their red and blue lights reflecting off the houses and the wet grass. She looked around wildly for someone to help her. Mrs. Bennett? Mr. Monroe? The family she had bullied for months? No one stepped forward, not one person. Karen stretched her arms out toward the neighbors. Please, she begged. Please, someone tell them I'm a good person. Tell them I didn't mean it. Tell them I was just trying to enforce the rules. Everyone stared at her in silence. Then old Mrs. Bennett said the words that broke whatever hope Karen had left. You threw someone's newborn baby. That is not enforcing anything. The color drained from Karen's face. Her knees wobbled. She clutched the fence post as if she needed it to stay standing. And then, she whispered, barely loud enough to hear, I didn't think it would end like this. Her voice was small, cracked, almost unrecognizable. She looked around again, at the neighbors, at the fading fire, at my wife holding the baby close, at me standing between her and the chaos she caused. And she realized, this wasn't a rule argument. This wasn't an HOA debate. This wasn't something she could yell her way out of. This was a crime, and the sirens were nearly at the house. Karen's breath went shallow, her hands trembled. She took one small step back, then another. But no matter how far she moved, she couldn't escape what she had done. Because the child she grabbed, the newborn she threw, was the daughter of the police chief, and justice was nearly on her doorstep. The sirens grew louder, echoing between the houses, bouncing off fences, vibrating in the cool fall air. Every neighbor stopped whispering and turned toward the sound. Even the leaves seemed to pause as two patrol cars rolled slowly down the street, lights flashing red and blue across the neighborhood lawns. Karen froze where she stood, hands trembling, face pale. For someone who loved authority, she suddenly wanted nothing to do with it. The cars stopped at the curb. Doors opened. Two officers stepped out, Officer Ramirez and Officer Lee, both wearing calm but alert expressions. They saw me first. Chief, Ramirez called out, walking quickly toward us. We got several calls about an assault. I shifted slightly so he could see my wife holding our newborn safely against her chest. The baby was calm now, sleeping again after finally settling down from the shock. I nodded once. Karen grabbed my newborn, I said in a controlled tone, and threw her toward the fire pit. Gasps rippled through the crowd again, even though they already knew the truth. Somehow hearing it spoken out loud by the police chief made everything heavier. Karen snapped out of her frozen state. What? No, she shouted. I didn't throw her. That's a lie. I just moved her, slightly. She was being held wrong. It was a safety hazard. But every neighbor behind us shook their heads at the same time. Mr. Monroe crossed his arms. We all saw it, he said. Mrs. Bennett added, You snatched that baby and tossed her like a pillow. Karen's voice cracked. You're lying. Why would I throw a baby? Officer Lee stepped forward, voice steady. Ma'am, we need to talk about what happened. Karen backed away instantly. No, you can't talk to me. I'm the HOA president, she yelled, as if that title would magically protect her. Officer Ramirez raised an eyebrow. And what does that have to do with throwing an infant? Karen stuttered. Her eyes darted left and right. She looked for someone to support her, anyone, but every face was cold, tired, or disappointed. You don't understand, Karen said, voice shaking harder. I keep this neighborhood safe. I enforce the rules. If the HOA standards crumble, everything falls apart. You don't get to enforce rules with your hands, I said. You don't touch a child. Ever. Karen pointed directly at me, her voice desperate. I didn't know she was your baby. I didn't know you were the chief. That wouldn't change anything, Officer Lee replied. You put a newborn at risk. Karen stumbled back 2 steps. No, she wasn't in danger. She was wrapped in a blanket. The fire is tiny, she cried hysterically. The teenager near the fence scoffed loudly. The baby flew through the air, Karen. We all saw it. Karen's voice rose to a shriek. Stop saying that. You're all trying to destroy me. Officer Ramirez sighed, stepping right up to her. Ma'am, please calm down. Karen shook her head violently. No, I refuse. I am not going with you. You can't arrest me. I rule this neighborhood. Ramirez's voice dropped low. Not anymore. Karen spun to run, her instincts taking over. But the grass was still damp, and the slope was uneven. Her foot slipped and she dropped to her knees with a startled cry. She looked up from the ground, her red jacket smeared with grass, her voice trembling. Please, she whispered. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean any of it. I was just trying to keep order. Officer Lee gently took her by the arm. Ma'am, stand up. Karen shook like a leaf in the wind. I'm not a bad person, she said, her voice cracking. I swear, I was just enforcing the rules. You have to believe me. The officers exchanged a glance. Calm, professional, but unyielding. You put a baby at risk, Ramirez said. That's not something we ignore. Karen let out a choked sob. No, please don't take me. But the officers were already guiding her toward the patrol car. She didn't fight this time. Her shoulders sagged as if the weight of every complaint, every argument, every cruel decision she'd made finally crashed down on her. The neighbors watched quietly. No one cheered, no one celebrated. It wasn't joy, it was relief. For the first time in a long time, no one felt afraid of Karen. She looked over her shoulder as they opened the back door of the patrol car. Her eyes landed on my wife, on my sleeping newborn, on me standing beside them. Karen's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't think it would end like this. The car door closed with a soft but final click. The sirens didn't turn on. The car just rolled away slowly, leaving the neighborhood silent. My wife exhaled shakily, holding our daughter close. I placed a hand on her back, grounding us both. The neighbors scattered, returning to their homes, whispering quietly but respectfully. The fire pit flickered softly. The night air felt still. The chaos had finally passed, and the neighborhood, for the first time in months, felt safe again. The night felt strangely quiet after the patrol cars disappeared down the street. The red and blue lights faded into the darkness, leaving only the soft glow of our backyard fire and the distant chirping of crickets. It was as if the entire neighborhood let out a breath it had been holding for years. I stood in the cool evening air for a moment, letting the calm sink in. No HOA lectures echoing across the fences. Just peace. My wife carried our newborn back into the house, wrapped carefully in her soft white blanket. The baby let out a small sigh, almost like she knew everything dangerous had passed, and snuggled deeper into the warmth of her mother's arms. I'm glad she's okay, my wife whispered, brushing a tear from her cheek. She didn't deserve any of that. No child does, I said, closing the sliding door behind us. Inside the house, everything felt warm and safe. The living room glowed softly from a lamp, and the quiet was soothing after the chaos we'd just lived through. I sat down on the couch and gently took our newborn into my arms. Her tiny fingers curled around my thumb, small and soft and perfect. She looked peaceful, like none of the shouting outside had touched her little world. My wife sat beside me and rested her head on my shoulder. I thought she could have... Her voice cracked, and she stopped, unable to finish the sentence. I shook my head gently. She didn't, I said. She's safe. That's what matters. My wife nodded and let out a long, trembling breath of relief. She leaned closer to the baby, planting a soft kiss on her tiny forehead. For a few quiet minutes, we simply sat there, both of us watching our daughter sleep, both of us grounding ourselves after the fear we had just gone through. Then came a gentle knock at the door. I stood up slowly, careful not to wake the baby, and walked to the entryway. When I opened the door, I saw Mrs. Bennett standing there with a tray covered in foil. I made a little soup, she said softly. You all had a rough night. Her voice was shaky, but kind. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched. Behind her, more neighbors appeared. Not in a crowd, not in panic, but quietly, respectfully. Each one carrying something, a warm blanket, a small stuffed toy, a box of cookies, a handwritten card, even a tiny knitted hat for the baby. We wanted to help, one neighbor said. We're so sorry for what happened, another whispered. No one should have to go through that, someone else added. I felt my chest tighten, not from anger this time, but from something warm. Community, support, People finally uniting for something good. We never had that while Karen was in charge. Her voice had always been louder than everyone else's fear. But tonight the neighborhood stood together, not against her rules but for each other. My wife appeared beside me, smiling tiredly but genuinely. "Thank you all," she said. "Really, thank you." One woman stepped forward, her eyes soft. "We're just glad your baby's okay," she said. "We were all terrified when we saw what she did." I nodded. "She's safe now," I said quietly. "And she'll stay safe." We talked for a few minutes, softly, gently, without any anger or fear. Just neighbors checking on neighbors, people being human again. Eventually, I closed the door and carried everything inside. My wife had already laid our newborn in her bassinet. She slept peacefully, one tiny hand resting near her cheek. I stood there watching her, just breathing, just thankful. It struck me then. The whole neighborhood had changed in a single night. The constant tension that came with Karen's presence, the fear of her sudden inspections, the fines she gave out like candy, the yelling, the control. All of it had finally cracked, broken, gone. My wife came up beside me and slipped her hand into mine. "She's going to grow up in a better neighborhood now," she whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "She will." Outside, the neighbors slowly walked home. The cool air felt lighter, calmer, freer, as if the community could finally breathe again. We turned off the lights and went back to the couch. My wife leaned against me, her head resting perfectly on my shoulder. "You okay?" I asked gently. She nodded. "I am now." I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. In the silence of our living room, with the soft crackle of the last glowing embers outside, I realized something important. Karen's biggest mistake wasn't breaking a rule. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't being bossy. It was touching the wrong child. She had thrown a newborn toward a fire, not understanding, not caring, not thinking. But the baby she threw was the daughter of the police chief. And justice always finds its way, always.